element, we will cover the topic chemical and biological agents. In this element, there are sub-elements, and these sub-elements are divided in 5 different topics. The first 7.1 talks about forms of classification of and health risk from hazardous substances. 7.2 assessment of health risk. 7.3 occupational exposure limits. 7.4 control measures, and 7.5 specific agents. So all these elements we will cover in this main element 7, chemical and biological agents. So let's start our training. NEBOSH IEC2 element 7.1. So our first element is 7.1 forms of classification of and health risk from hazardous substances. So the type of hazardous agents. So there are different types of hazardous agents. For the first one, we have chemical hazards. Under the chemical hazards, there are subcategories like toxic chemicals, corrosive, asbestos, and lead. After that, we have the biological hazards. In biological hazards, we have the bacteria, viruses, and fungus also. So in biological hazards, I would like to include one more hazard, which we are calling parasites. So there are 4 main hazards in biological, which is bacteria, viruses, fungus, and parasites. Type of hazardous, and remember there are 3 other agent groups. The first one is physical hazards. Under the physical hazards, we have the noise, we have the radiation, we have the vibration, and extremes of temperature. If you will go through element 6, in those elements 5 and 6, we have discussed about the noise, radiation, and vibration also. After then, we have the extreme of temperatures. Somehow I have touched extreme of temperature also, but I didn't explain in a detail in previous elements. But in this element, I will explain you in a very detailed way. Okay. After that, we have the ergonomic hazards. In the ergonomic hazards, we have the manual handling, we have the display screen equipment, and general workplaces. I hope you are aware that we have already covered manual handling and display screen equipment. So if you will go through our previous elements 5 and 6, you will get all very detailed information about the manual handling and display screen equipment. After then, we have the psychological hazards. Psychological hazards, stress, violence, and these topics also I have covered in element 6. The hazardous substances classification. Most governments have hazard communication standards for the labeling of dangerous chemicals. They use risk-based or hazard-based labeling. United Nations initiatives global harmonization of systems and classification of chemicals will ultimately classify as a single standard. All major countries, they are following the GHS standard. So if you have noticed any vehicle which is transporting any hazardous substance, any hazardous liquid or anything, so they have certain kind of symbols on the vehicles also, and they have some signage also which is telling you the very crucial information about the substance which is carrying by the transportation or carrying by any equipments or anything. Wherever this chemical is being stored, there are particular requirement about the labeling. So if the labeling is there properly, which following the GHS, you will automatically know that what kind of chemical is there and the type of hazards and risk involved with that particular chemical or hazardous substances. 2 groups exist. The first one, user, and second one, transporter. User communications vary greatly. US standard is 29 CFR 1910, and European standards are under the Dangerous Substances Directive 67 548 EEC and the Dangerous Preparations Directive 1999 45/EC. Categories of danger. Physiochemical effects, effects caused by the intrinsic physical or chemical properties of the substance. Then we have the health effects because of the chemicals. Harmful effects cause death, injury, or illness. And we have the environmental effects. So these are the three major effects because of the dangerous substances. Environmental effect will damage to the air, soil, or water. Categories of danger, health effects. When we are coming into any chemical and that can cause some health issues, those health issues will be different types. The first health issue, it will be very toxic. Even very low quantities cause death or damage to health. So these type of chemicals are very dangerous. So whenever we are handling these type of chemicals, we need to be very careful, and there should be the proper way of handling these substances or any chemical. Then we have the toxic. Toxic chemicals, low quantities cause death or damage to health. Then we have the harmful, may cause death, acute or chronic damage to health. If it's causing any acute effect on the body, that can be treatable. But if it is chronic, it will not, the person who's coming into contact with any substances, he will not, he or she, they will not come to know that there is any issue with the any health. After certain time periods, 5 years or 10 years, they will only come to know that yes, there is some problem, and that will be very late. Then we have the corrosive, may destroy living tissue on contact. So whenever you are coming into any corrosive chemicals or substances, what will happen? Wherever it will come into contact on the body, it will damage the living tissue on our body. Then we have the irritant, non-corrosive substances. It is a non-corrosive, but which may cause inflammation through contact with the skin or mucous membranes. So irritant substance or chemicals, whenever it is coming into contact with our body, it will not damage any living tissue, but it will give some irritation, inflammation. You will feel some burn on your body whenever it is coming into contact with your skin or your mucous membranes. Health effects, sensitizing substances cause an allergic reaction, example to lungs or skin. So if you are handling any sensitizing substance and you are coming into contact with that substance, so you will get some skin irritation or the lungs will affect and you will sneeze, you will cough. So that thing will come up. Then we have the carcinogenic, may cause cancer. Carcinogenic substances and the chemicals are very dangerous. So we need to be very careful whenever we are handling those chemicals or substances because they may cause cancer. Then we have the mutagenic, hereditary genetic effects affects future generation. So the mutagenic, what will happen? It will mostly cancer causing. It will cause cancer, but if any pregnant woman, they will come into contact, then it can affect their child also, and that the child will get some effect from the substances. Toxic to reproduction affects the developing infant in the womb and or male or female fertility. So the toxic to reproduction, it will affect the male or female fertility. Acute or chronic health effects. As you know that whenever any person come into contact with any hazardous substance, chemicals or anything, there will be two types of health effects. Either it could be acute, either it could be chronic. Acute, the immediate or short-term effect of a hazard to health. Whenever any person come into contact with any chemical substance, if it get acute, maybe there is some burn, and after some time, after the treatment, that will be okay. But if it is chronic, the effects which build up over a period of time, it may take 5 years or it may take 10-15 years to come to know that yes, there is any health issues related to that particular hazardous substances. Then we have the local or systematic health effects. Local effect at the point of contact. Whenever any substance will come into contact with the body, that's called local effect at the point of contact. Then we have the systematic effect at the some point in the body distant from the point of contact. Physical forms. We will talk about the physical forms of chemical agents. And we can get in the different forms. We can get in solid forms, dust, fume, fibers, liquid, mist, vapor, gas. So these are the different forms of chemical. The physical form greatly affects the route of entry. So that is so far for 7.1 for the physical forms of chemical agents. Now we will start our 7.2 assessment of health risk. Now the routes of entry, how these hazardous substances or any chemical that will enter to our body. There are different routes of entry. The first route of entry is inhalation. Whenever you are inhaling, taking breathe in and breathe out. So that time what will happen? These substances will get into our body. Second, we have the ingestion. Third, we have absorption through the skin. Whenever it's come into contact with the skin, our skin will absorb some part of the chemical or substances. Then we have the aspiration. Then we have the injection, cuts and gauges puncture. Whenever you are getting any cut on your skin, so any chemical will come into contact with that cut part, and that way a chemical or hazardous substance will enter to our body. Note, corrosives and irritants don't have to enter the body to have an effect, because the corrosive and irritants, what they will do, whenever they will come into contact, they will give the effect. So they don't have to enter the body. Now the routes of entry and attack, how the substances will enter in our body and how they will attack. So we have the solids, we have the liquids, we have the gases, vapors, and dust, and the fumes. And liquids, what they will do? Liquid come into contact, skin contact, and that will come through the inhalation, and that will affect the lungs also, ingestion also, intestinal tract, solids like dust, vapors, fumes, and gases, and relative hazard potential. Now, target organs, which part of the body will be targeted because of any chemical substances or any hazardous substances? It will affect our brain, it will affect our nasal passages, it will affect lungs, liver, bones, skin, bladder, kidney, heart, nerves, and lungs and skin. So these are the target organs, and different chemicals and different substances they will affect. As you can see here, nasal passages, nickel and chromium compounds, brain, lead and mercury and compounds, lungs, nerves, heart. So different substances will affect different organs in our body. The concept of target organs, toxic agents are blood-borne. The blood stream reaches all organs, because what will happen? Blood will go to all our body. Different organs react differently. Damage may be temporary or permanent. How do toxins enter the body? What disease are caused? And what are the main defenses? So these things we will learn. Respiratory system. The respiratory tract. This is the respiratory system. Nasal cavity. This is the nasal cavity, oral cavity, larynx or voice box, trachea, windpipe, epiglottis, and esophagus. So particles greater than 10 microns filtered by URT defense mechanism. Respiratory system, bronchi, tree, and lungs. So this is the lungs. Second, bronchi, trachea, bronchioles, and cardiac notch. So particles less than 7 microns diameters enter alveoli. So if any particles that is less than 7 micron, that will enter to our lungs, causing damage. So these are the most dangerous particles, dust particles or any fume particles that will enter to our lungs, because that will affect to our lung. Now the respiratory defense. What are the defenses are there that can protect our body from these hazardous substances? The first one we have nasal filtration. Nasal filtration, you can in our nose there are some tiny hairs. So those hair particles, what they will do, if any dust particles or chemical particles is 10 microns or more than 10 microns, what they will do, they will filter them and they will come out through the sneezing or through the coughing. After then, tear productions, whenever any chemical or hazardous substances will come into contact with our body, or it will go to our mucous membranes, so what will happen? We will start to tear. So the tear will come out. So through the tear also that hazardous substances will come out. That will not go into our body. Then we have the cough and sneeze, as I said, and the mucus production, ciliary escalator, and macrophages and inflammatory response. So when we are getting an inflammatory responses, so that time we will come to know that yes, there are some problems. So we will take care also. So all of these are defense mechanism that will protect us from any hazardous substances. Now the cilia. Cilia occur in the nasal passages and the trachea. They have a characteristic beak to waft inhaled particles and secreted mucus towards the sensitive parts of the respiratory tract. Reflex action then prompts sneeze or cough response. So what will happen, cilia? This will protect our body and it will not allow the particles, the dust particles or any chemical particles to enter our body through the swab, waft inhaled particles and secreted mucus towards the sensitive parts of the respiratory tract. Now we have the lung disease caused by the dust or fibers. So as you know that asbestos is caused disease we are calling as asbestosis. Long-term exposure to asbestos fibers. Whenever the people they are coming into contact with asbestos fibers, they work with the asbestos, they will get the disease called asbestosis. Then we have the biocinosis, exposure to cotton or flax. The people who is working with the cotton or flax, they will get the disease called biocinosis. The minor pneumoconiosis, coal mining. The people who is working with the coal mining, they will get the disease. Then we have the silicosis, mining, quarrying, and stone cutting. The people who is working with the mining and stone cutting, they will come into contact with the silica dust and it will cause disease called silicosis. Now in this slide, I have explained you about the skin structure and how it will function. Skin has three layers. The first we have the epidermis, conified layer, hair follicles and sebaceous glands, and subcutaneous fat, sweat glands and pores, nerves endings, melanin production, and blood capillaries. So these are the different parts of the skin. These are the structures, skin structure. So these are the things making the skin structure. So as you know that there are three different layer of the skin. The first one we have the epidermis, the top layer. Then we have the dermis, and then we have the hypodermis. Skin defense. How our skin will protect us, how it will defend. What agents are damaging to the skin? What are the main skin defenses? And what is the main occupational skin disease? We'll learn about these three things. Now, the dermatitis, as you know that dermatitis is related to any skin disease. Primary or contact dermatitis can affect any person as a result of short or long exposure and irritation. Secondary or allergic dermatitis results from sensitization to a substance, usually following repeated overexposure. Whenever the people they come into contact with any hazardous substance, they daily ways they are using any chemical, they are coming into contact with the water. So what will happen? Their skin will start to affect, and dermatitis issues will come up. Corrosive attack. So what agents might cause this type of burn? Any corrosive, whenever the people they are coming into any corrosive chemicals, corrosive agents, so they will get corrosive attack. And what kind of circumstances might it happen? The people who suddenly they are coming into contact with any corrosive chemical or any emergency or any accident, so these things can happen. Disease caused by the chemicals. Chemical agents, ammonia and chlorine, carbon dioxide, organic solvents such as trichloroethylene, carbon monoxide, isocyanates, lead, asbestos, and silica. So these are the chemical agents that can cause disease to human. Lung X-ray showing asbestosis. You can see here it's showing the asbestosis. Now the disease biological agents. There are different biological agents called biological agents, also known as microorganisms. As you know that there are four different types of microbiological agents: bacteria, viruses, molds, fungi, and parasites also are there. Bacteria, you will find in any food product, human being, and any water. Then we have the virus particles. Virus particle normally you will find any living organisms like HIV virus, hepatitis B, hepatitis A. So these are the different viruses. Then we have the molds, fungus, and yeast, farmers, lung, and precautions. This is caused by biological agents. Legionellosis. Legionellosis is caused by the Legionella bacteria, caused by inhalation of moist air containing the Legionella bacteria. The bacterium is very common and is found in various forms in most watercourses. The disease affects the respiratory system. So Legionella is also very dangerous bacteria that we can normally find in the water and any equipment or any like structure which is containing any moist air. Then we have the hepatitis B and C caused by the contact with blood and is most concerned to first aiders. Those in medical professions affect liver and may cause possible death. The people who is working in medical industry and the people who is providing the first aid, they are at the greater risk of hepatitis B and C. Regarding the hepatitis B and C and the bloodborne disease, I have uploaded one separate video. If you will go to my channel, you will get their bloodborne disease. So you can go through that video that will tell you about these hepatitis B and C and A. Then we have the leptospirosis. It's a well disease, a form of jaundice transmitted via rat's urine and therefore may be contracted by sewer workers, workers near canals or rivers, waste disposal site operatives, farmers, veterinary staff, and slaughterhouse workers, etc. So these are the people, they are at the greater risk of leptospirosis because this disease is caused by the rat urine. And wherever the people, they have the risk contact with the rat urine, they are at the higher risk of this leptospirosis disease. Substances hazardous to health. Most governments have hazard communication standards. They include risk-based or hazard-based labeling. So as you know that GHS, Global Harmonization System for Classification of Chemicals, whenever you are transporting any chemical or whenever you are storing any chemical, you have to follow the GHS standards that will tell you about the hazard related to the chemical. Safety data sheets. As you know that any hazardous substance or any chemical that will come with the safety data sheets. A safety data sheet will contain 16 important information. So these are the 16 important information that you can get it like supplier details, ingredients, what are the ingredients have been used to make that particular substance, chemical, hazard identification, hazard related to the particular chemical, first aid measures. If there is any accident or incident, what are the first aid measures you require? If there is any fire incident, what are the measures you need to take? If there is any accident, what you need to do? How you have to handle and store? Control and protection. How you will control that chemical and how you will protect. Chemical and physical properties of that particular substance. Stability and reactivity. Whether that chemical will reactive with any other substance, that will tell you also. Toxicology information, ecological, disposable, how you have to dispose, how you have to transport, regulatory information, and other information. So these are the 16 most important information will be there in the safety data sheet. Designed based on a globally used standard. Now the classification and labeling. So these are the classification and labeling. Wherever if you are seeing these type of sign, you can say that it is very toxic. Very low quantities can cause death or damage to health. Then we have the toxic. Low quantities can cause death or damage to health. It's very toxic, T plus, it is only T. Then we have the harmful. It is X. May cause death or damage to health. Then we have the corrosive. May destroy living tissue on contact. Whenever it will come into contact with any skin, it may destroy any living tissue. So this type of signage you will get for the corrosive. Then we have the irritant, non-corrosive substance which may cause inflammation through contact with the skin or irritant. Then we have the carcinogenic, may cause cancer. Mutagenic may include genetic defects. So these any one of these sign will be there. Now the classification and labeling. Toxic to reproduction. Substance is toxic for reproductive organs and the developing infant in the womb. So these type of signs will be there. Then we have the sensitizing, can cause skin or respiratory issue. So this sign will be there. Sorry. Now, how to control substance hazardous to health? So, how are you going to control them to avoid any health issues, any safety issues related to the any hazardous substances? The following 6 points are likely to be covered by national legislation. First, you have to do the risk assessment. No work unless assessment made. Before conducting any risk assessment, do not start any work with the chemical or hazardous substances. Assessment to be recorded and reviewed. Whenever you are doing any assessment, like cost assessment or the risk assessment, that need to be recorded and reviewed. Control of exposure. Emphasize on preventing exposure. Avoid any exposure. Limits for inhalable substances. Limits. How you can limit it, inhalable substances. So there are different control measures that you have to use. We will discuss about those control measures later on. Then do not control by PPE alone. So as you know that there are hierarchy of control measures. So that hierarchy you need to use. Now the use of control, employees must ensure use of controls. Employee must use controls. Maintenance and testing, control must be maintained and tested. If you are using any LEV or any other engineering measures to control any hazardous substance, so that need to be tested and need to be maintained regularly every 14 months in the UK for extraction system. So if you are using any extraction system, any exhaust or anything LEV, that need to be regularly maintained and tested. In UK, it is every 14 months, but it depends on your country to country, and it depends on any ISO standard, any legal standards, or any client requirements. It depends on them. Exposure, how you will monitor where necessary, wherever it is necessary, where a suitable procedure exists. Health surveillance, that where necessary by biological monitoring and by health monitoring. These are the three things you can use for the health surveillance. 8 principles of good practice in handling hazardous substances. So these are the 8 principles that we can use whenever we are handling any hazardous substances. Design and operate processes and activities to minimize emission, release, and spread of hazardous substances in the environment. Take into account all relevant routes of exposure when developing control measures. Control exposure by measures that are proportionate to the health risk. Then you have to choose the most effective and reliable control options which minimize the escape and spread of hazardous substances. Whenever you are implementing any control measures, do not just implement, try to evaluate that, the effectiveness of that control measures. Where adequate control cannot be achieved by other means, you have to provide the suitable PPE that can reduce the any exposure. Check and review regularly all elements of control measures for their continued effectiveness. So that need to be checked. Then inform and train all employees on the hazards. So all the employees, they need to be informed, they need to be trained properly regarding hazardous substances, regarding PPE, safe working procedures, and different other requirements. Ensure that the introduction of control measures does not increase overall risk. So whenever you are applying any control measures, you have to make sure that these new control measures are not going to increase the risk. Okay, so that need to be also checked. Now, hazardous substances assessment, 5 steps. Principles of assessment are based on the general 5-step approach. As you know that risk assessment, it is the same one. First, you have to gather the information, evaluate the risk, decide what's need to be done, you need to record, and after that you need to review. Now the gather information. When you are gathering the information, from where you will gather the information? Information can be obtained from MSDS, packaging and labeling, EH40, local specific law. How do we evaluate the risk? Qualitative evaluation, quantitative evaluation, grab or spot sampling that you can do, long-term sampling, environmental levels, and personal dosimetry also you can use. So derailleur, detector pump, and stain tube. So these are the pump also that we can use to check the exposure limit. New and used stain tubes. There are two type of tubes you can see here. It is the new one and it is the used one. So you can see here it is affected and exposed, and it is not exposed. And vapor personal dosimeter kit. This is a dust and personal dosimetry kit that the personal individual person can use in any hazardous substances area. Filter holder. So this is the particular type of filter. So figure 1 multi-orifice total inhalable sand. O-ring seal here. Filter 25 mm. 25 millimeter filter is there. And filter support grid. This is the filter support grid. And cap with 7 inlet holes 4 mm diameter. So this is the 4 mm diameter. From this 4 mm, the dust or any hazardous substance that will enter and it will go here, and this filter will do filtration. And it is the connection to the pump. Passive samplers. So this is the way we have to use personal sampler. Passive samplers. So is the collar clip. This clip you have to put on the collar. The person who exposed to any hazardous substance. Then this option, solvent chamber. There is the chamber. Then we have the solvent. Then this is the filling ports. There is the cover and diffuser barrier. So these are the passive samplers that can be used to check the exposure. So that's all for element 7.2, and that's all for this training video. In our next topic, we will cover our 7.3 and 7.4 and 7.5. I hope you like this video and the information which I have shared with you. If you have any issues or any information that you required, please let me know related to this training and any other information you need for the course. So thank you so much for your time and patience. Have a good day. See you.